what are we talking about when we're talking about music? And who's talking about it, right? So the diversity of musical styles, the diversity of the population, be it the faculty population, the student population, issues of sociopolitics of departments, and administrative issues within the department and within the institution, and funding issues, and there's a million of practicalities, and there are also pedagogical philosophies, and we've talked about so many things. It's hard to. I have maybe a pet topic or two of my own I might try to interject at some point, but basically, I'd like to just open it up for people to address an issue of interest to you, and maybe to think about it in terms of posing a question to the group that is something a question that you could happen to be wrestling with personally that you'd like some input from others on. I'll just open it up to anybody to start that.
I got it.
Thank you.
Well, I'll tell you what, I just want to start out by saying some people mentioned Vijay this morning referenced his talk, and I just wanted to say that he was very sorry he couldn't be here, but he had to get back to New York tonight, so I had to drive to the airport this morning. But I have a question that I would love to hear anybody respond to, which is that, as Chris just said, there's so many things on the table here, and in my experience, when you have these small kind of unique conferences that are not part of the established regimes, right? Like it's not AMS or SEM or CMS or whatever these things are, There's just these little kind of one-off things that people go to around a topic. There's usually a lot of really interesting energy and connections that come out of it, and people get all excited about meeting each other and ideas. And then it's afterward, there's initial phase where people are like, yeah, let's, start a listserv and, exchange all this information or start a journal or, and then they kind of like wanes as people go back to their lives and get busy with all the boring stuff we have to do and all the exciting other things we're involved in. So I'm just kind of concerned. I want to find a middle way between not just completely abandoning all of this, but not having unrealistic expectations. And I was just curious what, not so much about this event in particular, but in general, what kinds of formations around, academic music people think might be useful to work towards building, or ones that people are already working towards building that bring together people from different institutions, because there are, I know James just mentioned ICAST, there are things like this where people get big grants to bring together researchers, teachers, academics, artists, and try and sort of start new cool things. And ICAST has been great. They've really done it. They have a postdoc. They've influenced a lot of institutions and done a lot of work. But, that took years of kind of planning and building through smaller events. And so I'm just kind of curious about the group here is so heterogeneous. There are people from very wealthy private schools, from very working class, large state universities, from art schools, from academic research institutions. It's a really mixed bunch. And one of the things that I often see is that it's hard to get that heterogeneity in the main, you go to these main established societies and it's hard to find that as much. People form their little groups around the types of institutions. So I would really be interested in seeing some kind of more long-lived initiative or formation of some kind that could bring people together on a regular basis from different types of institutions, because I think the questions we're all trying to address are similar, even if we have very different resources and context. So I'm just curious what people would like to see kind of happen down the road in terms of organizational changes to continue these sorts of conversations.
Why don't you start with a really simple request, not grandiose at all, and which would be if you can just send us everybody's email. It's very simple, but that way you can communicate with a certain person you had coffee with, and when it's appropriate, you can do a blind CC to the whole group and say, I'm doing this, or I'm organizing a conference. I enjoy these small conferences for the obvious reason that you get to know people better. And for me, this is like Old Home Week, or Old Home Weekend. Seeing people I haven't seen for 30 years is really fun. And had time to really talk to people and stuff. So I like these smaller conferences actually better than the big conferences. And for that reason, just that it's more laid back and more personal. But anyway, for me personally, my memory isn't so great. I've had a bunch of conversations. Nobody uses business cards anymore. And so it'd be really handy to have that. And then it wouldn't be any grandiose idea that we had some fancy, network thing, but just a way of communicating with whoever you feel like at any time. And any member of a group, sometimes it's only appropriate to send a personal email, sometimes you want to announce it to everybody. So let's at least start with that, unless someone really doesn't want us to know their email, I doubt that.
Yeah.
And then, if anyone has more profound suggestions, I'd be interested, but that's a really good practical start. Because I've been trying to collect people's names and emails, and I'm doing a terrible job. So it'd be a lot easier.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. That's easy.
Scott?
Yeah, I want to answer it with a question for the conference organizers. We noticed that on the website and the information about the symposium that this is referred to as the first.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering, the inaugural, and I'm wondering what your intention is in terms of continuing these, and whether this will be a rotating topic, or if you feel like taking the lead and continuing on this topic here, or whether or not this, because I think one of the things that would be nice is to be able to have a continuing, maybe not annually, but like some kind of an event that we can kind of work towards continuing the discussion.
Yeah, we called it inaugural, maybe somewhat optimistically, and I don't think we put the word annual in, somewhat cautiously. Right in this moment we're all going, not next year, that's for sure. It is a fair bit of work, but it's definitely something that we had envisioned being an ongoing thing here at our department. But not necessarily only on the topic of new directions in graduate music programs. Whatever seemed to be a topic that was of interest to us and probably of interest to a lot of people at other institutions is kind of our intention. Yeah. Did you guys have anything else to say in that regard, other ICIT faculty? No? Did I sum it up accurately?
That covered
it.
So I'm not sure if this totally answers Michael's question, but I think that the program you guys have here on CIT is really, really interesting. And one of the things I find as a person who deals with undergraduates and sort of mentoring them, and they start thinking about going to grad school, is I find that I'm making a list of new directions in graduate programs and often trying to articulate that list to students. So maybe there's a way of making the conversations we've had here a bit more public in some way. And I'm also thinking about the relationship between what our conversations have been about so far and career paths for graduating MFA students here, or PhDs or DMAs, people that, real institutional change often happens generationally, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that the program you guys have here fits within a cohort of other programs that currently don't have the same traction that, ethnomusicology from Chicago or musicology from Columbia have. And I would just love to see a hopefully faster than glacial shift occur.
Yes.
So, I think the conference has the potential for helping to encourage that shift to happen more quickly.
Let me say, just on a mundane but probably important matter, Juan here has been dutifully videoing all of these sessions as well as the conference event, right?
Oh, yeah.
And we do have a little bit of money to pay some people to do some post-production on these things, at least to get them up on the web in case. If there are people who would, would not want to have their presentation put on a Vimeo site or something, we would certainly be happy to excuse you, but we also, I think, could fairly easily create such a site so that at least what happened here is made public.
Dana also made a great suggestion that if people wanted to give us their PDFs of their slides, those that used, notes and presented some, or even a full paper in some cases if someone just read it, that we could post this stuff on a site for either just us to download, or if you want to make it public, I guess you could do that yourself. But we could certainly collect these things and just share the information, because often, you don't want to sit here all the time taking notes on everything furiously, but if everybody's got their stuff in some kind of digital format anyway, it wouldn't be hard to do. So that might be something that people are into. It wouldn't be hard for us to do.
I think when we started this program here, we really did it from, I think the initial impetus was purely self-serving. We had Teakagi leading a very small master's program in jazz studies. We had me leading a very small program in composition technology. We hired Michael to sort of be a little bit of all of these things, plus bring a open improvisation aspect to the program. And then we just all sort of looked at each other and said, do we want to continue doing what we're doing, leading these tiny programs by ourselves? We're all kind of interested in the same stuff and doing the same stuff. That was the initial impetus. But as we started to talk about it, we realized that there was this potentially subversive element to it, which was, okay, so part of what we should be thinking about is training that next generation who's going to subvert things even farther. And so that was really where we're coming from, and I think that's maybe something that we could all consider is, as you say, it is totally generational. You know, it's a closed society of academics who tend to hire people like themselves, and so it's very hard for that system to change unless somebody consciously makes an effort. Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. We gotta go.
Bye-bye.
I was just going to say, I just came from the IASPM conference, which is the Study for Popular Music conference, and on their site, I mean, it's a lively site with discourse about, I mean, blog posts, and some people posting the papers they actually gave these conferences, and there's actually a section called Current Syllabi, and people then chime in. It acts as a blog post, and people chime in and give thoughts and ideas for new ways to approach teaching classes and stuff. So almost like an open course model in a way. And also, real quick, just being at that conference, there was a plenary session on interdisciplinarity from one musicologist, a historian, a communication studies writer, and an English professor, all writing on popular music. And I thought it was really interesting just to hear those different perspectives on people coming from, when we talk about interdisciplinarity, I guess, and hearing these different perspectives from these people writing about the same thing or dealing with the same thing in very different ways, and talking a lot about audience and how sort of audience plays into it and who you want to reach, who you want to be open to and who you don't want to be open to. I think if there was sort of a space online where we took voices or took input from disparate connections, it would help quite a bit, you know.
I was thinking that, you know, with the University of Guelph, I feel like the program with Fischlin and Ajay Headway, that they started, you know, kind of first with this festival, then collecting papers, and then it came down to the conference that we had set up at UCSD, Improvising Across Borders, which was an interdisciplinary conference. I feel like Ajay has created this very large, you know, kind of community, and I'm wondering if the West Coast, our community, which has grown substantially, could then have kind of a response, and we could start this new kinds of, same kinds of concepts where we have this annual, you know, week-long festival with the keynotes, with their colloquiums. So we've got scholarship and the practical together. Maybe we're adding another dimension there too. Maybe there's something else that we need to be talking about all the time. Maybe that interdisciplinarity, and we're not just situating music, but then we're going to bring in some other aspects. And I'm wondering if it's now our turn as a response to, and helping, again, make an additive community globally with what Ajay's been doing so successfully. And again, it's a lot of people rolling up their sleeves. It's a lot of people from different institutions working collectively for sort of the common good of this kind of practice and thought stream. And I'm game if other people are game to kind of start. You've already started something here. You know, I mean, maybe it's overwhelming to think you do that again right away, but maybe that's something collectively people can think about.
Right. As we all collectively think about it.
Well, just one quick thought on that, and I think it's a great idea that Dana raises about, you know, the West Coast actually has a critical mass right now in certain areas, but it also has this long history, right? I mean, there's a lot. I mean, you know, we have David here, we have people here who've been on the West Coast doing new kinds of music for a long time. You know, my senior colleague Kay here in the jazz world out of Los Angeles for a long time. I mean, there's a lot a lot of older history too, and I think one of the challenges as we try to draw on the longer history, but also the sort of newer formations that are popping up, is defining an area. And one of the reasons that I think you mentioned Ajay Heble and the ICAST program that James referred to, one of the reasons they were so successful at getting these gigantic grants and creating these links among institutions and doing these huge projects is because they had a really clear concept around which to do this sort of field building, They were really kind of colonizing improvisation in academia and saying that we're going to create improvisation studies. And it's led to all this stuff. I mean, George Lewis is now about to put out this Oxford companion book with 2 volumes with an incredible array of interdisciplinary writing on improvisation. All that stuff is linked, and it's coming out of this idea of improvisation that is sort of their main top-level keyword, And when I think about what we just saw in the past 48 hours, there isn't really a single keyword. There's not there's this idea of new directions in graduate. We just threw that on because we didn't know what else to call it, right? I mean, it's a very vague concept, and there's so many new directions, and they're all interrelated in fascinating ways. And there's certainly connections among what everybody's doing, but I think a lot of people at this event are coming from kind of different places with different interests, and I'm totally into what Dana's saying, and it's fascinating and a great concept, but my struggle is how do we, to really tap that energy and kind of move it forward in the way you're describing, I think requires maybe a little bit more narrow definition of something to bring these West Coast people together, rather than just let's just get a bunch of cool people from the West Coast together, but we have to think of some kind of way to harness that, and so that maybe is the topic of more discussion that we can all, people here and others can sort of network around that and try and figure out maybe several things will come out of it. Maybe one group wants to go in one direction with technology, another is more about, new visions of pedagogy or online telepresent communities or whatever it is that you want to do with. But I really think that for more practical reasons, you need some kind of focal point, conceptually, and that's what I'm not quite clear on. So.
Yeah, what I'm about to say isn't going to give you that word. But I was having a conversation last night at intermission of the concert, and someone said that the performance with Mari and Vijay was like one of the best conference performances they'd ever heard anywhere. And I said, well, that's because it's like we've sort of gotten past the point of, okay, computer music's a thing, and improvisation's a thing, and contemporary composition's a thing. And now we've gotten together for this weekend and said, okay, well, we're going to make really good music with this breadth of practices that sort of interrelate. And so that doesn't solve your keyword problem, but I mean, I sort of want to say, we'll just call it good music. Which doesn't solve that problem.
So we'll start a journal of good music studies.
So relating to the online learning thing that came out in 2006, there's a NEAM conference, NEAM
New Interfaces for Musical Expression is an annual conference.
Annual conference. There was one in Paris in 2006, and there was a group from England called I Maestro. Have you heard?
Yes.
I was there. You were there? What happened to it? Is it still there?
I didn't see it.
Because so they were on distant learning group, a European consortium, wasn't it? Like a pan-European lesson thing, distant lesson, auditioning, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they're talking specifically to me about how to coach a violin lesson. And specifically, your bow is crooked. You can tell by, like a sensor and all that with a, yeah. And then occurred, and then there was that it never worked because those old professors in conservatories barely can type email.
Yeah.
How are you going to help them? They would rather pay for a plane ticket for the kids to come there, So that never worked out. So that there's a reality problem. Maybe it's the East Coast old people thing. Not like the hip West Coast people like you.
Well, I mean, another thing to consider is that, I mean, most of us are in fairly privileged positions of having salaries at academic institutions, but, the Coursera is this online course offering system that's becoming enormously popular. I just spoke to somebody who recently offered an electronic music course, where he said he had 140,000 class members.
Wow.
So I mean, we can also think about, we've all got our jobs, and maybe we can give something back to the broader system that goes beyond the walls of our own institution by doing something along those lines, tapping into an infrastructure that's already been created for doing that. Now, I honestly don't know enough about Coursera to say whether that is the avenue. There may be pros and cons of any given system. But the fact is that there are ways to address, to give an educational experience at any level, which people then take, be it for credit or for, certification or whatever.
For me, maybe this is just a secret conversation between you and me. No, remember what I was talking about, like ready-to-wear system that I need to make? I need to pick your brains to really, create something like that. And I was thinking of maybe getting Julia to sort of get that out, like to the public and maybe a forum or something to make it more accessible and public, and anybody who, the Eurocom forum is now free to join.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you have to pay something if you want to get something, but you can actually join.
You can access it.
Yeah, you can access it. So it's more open in that way, and maybe something like that to make more democratic, because not only those select few like yourselves
Yeah.
who can really do it.
Yeah, and I think, like Dana, for example, has this good infrastructure support from her own institution, and we have pretty good support in our institution, but I know there are a lot of universities that don't, so it's just something to think about as other ways that you can have the same sort of online effect, or a comparable one. Dana, do you have anything to say about that in particular?
About infrastructure?
Well, I mean, as I said, you have a kind of infrastructure support within your institution. Have you explored other organizations like Coursera or?
No, I haven't. That's not. We have just the platform at the School of Law, which is the Blackboard, right now, and that's what they've decided to use.
I know Ajay said he's just about completed a course for Educate4 program.
We're doing 4 courses on the Coursera.
And that's something that for everybody to consider, is that it's an enormous job to make one course online like that. It's a lot of video production and so on. But I don't know, what kind of support did you get from them for that?
Well, we're just learning. It looks pretty good. It looks like they're giving us platform support and advice and some technical assistance. We have an IT department, but we're a small institution, so we have some help there. We also have run a course on 10 Legs. 10 Legs it's more of a kind of an artist's social media collaborative platform. So it's not, it depends on what kind of course it is. If it's about direct interaction among people in class and an instructor, it's interesting. This was a course in portfolio development for high school students, actually, for artists and animators, how to develop portfolios to prepare to get into college. And we've done it twice. That was successful. And Coursera is, we're just sticking our toe in the water and seeing what it's like. So far these are open access, non-credit to the outside world. We'll see what that does, and then the next time around we'll see how we expand it out. So
I think it may well be, as we look forward to, as there are more and more ways to get information that is highly organized and very high level and yet free, that maybe the whole idea of the diploma will change.
At my institution, we've been debating whether or not to join a consortium like Coursera or edX, or there's a couple of other options out there. The faculty's been really resistant to it, but the administration sort of put a price tag at launching the first 8 classes as $2 million. So it's not exactly free.
This is, in our case, it's not costing very much.
That being just because you have sufficient infrastructure just to make videos.
Yeah, there's something, yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's costing something, but not a lot and we're either taking existing or adapting existing course content. So it's not starting
the course
from scratch.
Yeah. Are there other topics that people would like to raise, maybe wholly different from the ones we've been talking about so far?
Well, more on that, who owns the copyright when you create these online courses? Who retains ownership of it?
In our case, we do.
So the individual instructor.
I think each one of those consortial agreements is slightly different.
They are.
Yeah. And some you do receive the copyright. Some are for a credit of some sort or not. Some you get certificates.
I have a topic that I'd like to ask a question about, which is maybe tangential to this, which is the issue of inclusion, of greater inclusion of people participating in this type of music, perhaps, but really just in music education in general. As I mentioned earlier, I think that academic institutions tend to be people who are trained in a particular way, got a job at that institution because they were hired by people who were trained in that same way and who saw something in common with those people. In other words, there was a sympathy of belief systems already in place. And they, as we've all talked about extensively this weekend, there are certain canons that one deals with, and these all serve to, in some ways, exclude people and certain types of people particularly. And so I'm very interested in how do we go about changing that if we have the will to change it. For example, we have a program that we thought would tend to be more inclusive because of its diverse, emphases on 3 different areas. But in fact, those are 3 areas that are highly male-dominated to begin with: jazz improvisation, computer music technology, and composition. And so we found that we don't get very many female applicants. And I talk to colleagues all over not only all over the country, all over the world, and I say, "Are you experiencing the same thing?" And they say, "Yes." And I say, "What are you doing about it? What can we do about it?" And they say, "I don't know." So it does seem to be a question that a lot of people are grappling with. And I wonder if anybody has any thoughts on approaches that you're taking, approaches that you have thought of trying to explore.
Well, my class in Juilliard, I stopped getting girls in my class for ages and ages. Since last decade, I didn't have any girls, only boys. But this year, for some reason, I have 3 girls all of a sudden, and only girls in my class. And I have independent students who are boys. But
the classes.
Yeah, I look at myself, wow, it's a girls' school.
Yeah.
So, I don't know why. I have no idea why.
I mean, one assumption might be that it's a role model issue, right?
Yeah,
but I don't think it's anywhere near as simple as that. And I also think that it's something that starts way before graduate school, probably way before undergraduate school. And so it's not something that one can just say, okay, I'm going to fix this at this level. It has to be maybe something.
But then I find myself telling this really young, really good undergraduate composer who's already out there and making things that she really did a really great concert the other day, and I found myself telling her music is very strong emotionally, and then I told her now already, she's barely 27, maybe in the very near future you get reviewed by the New York Times or whatever, like a major critic, and you might encounter expression like a visceral, emotional, that's connected to being a female.
You're going to get pigeonholed over.
Yeah, so I already warned her that, when that happens, don't get upset.
Nicole?
I think there just needs to be a lot more encouragement on the undergraduate level for students to experiment. I mean, that's basically how it happened for me. I was encouraged to try something that I might not have ever thought about trying. And I think that for some reason that doesn't happen so much for female students. it does start in the beginning. I mean, if you look at like high schools, for the most part, it's almost 50-50 girls and boys that are playing music.
Do you think there's already, I mean, I don't really know because I haven't taught in high school, is there already a prejudice like all the girls get handed flutes since they play the flute and all
Well,
the...
it's not even so much about the instrument, it's just in terms of experimentation, like with improvisation or especially with composition, they're not often given that opportunity to try that or encourage.
And at the undergraduate level, for your, just sort of anecdotally from your own experience, what were the things that really, you know, were key or significant in your education?
That I had teachers coming up to me saying, why don't you try this class? I think you might like it. And you know, then it's like a whole other world opens up that you may not have known was possible for you, you know. And I really think that mentorship is important and opening up maybe access outside of the university level, with different special programs, summer programs, and things that can encourage young women to have these opportunities.
Jane?
What about recruitment? I'm just wondering how we're all dealing with that. Because it's something that I have to start thinking more about, and I haven't started, and I don't. What are people doing for recruitment and getting them in a variety of situations, amongst a diverse community? I'm just kind of wondering as a question how people are.
What works?
What's working for us to get out there and spread our work amongst a diverse group of people?
Paolo, do you have an answer to that?
In have some thoughts. I think that the women, they are much more under pressure to get access to a professional level when they go to the college. I think they are much more under that sort of unconscious pressure, social pressure to get a job. And I think they tend to be more to go to the college in areas where they have more perspective to be succeed professional. And I think music, it's not one, especially if you are experimenting and do things that are for that. There's no really market for that. And I think that's prevent much women to be like composers or to be to follow careers that there's no really secure issue of that. But I think that's not because the women don't want to experiment. I think that's because there's a need that when a woman just invested all this time and all this money or from their family or whatever it is, they need to succeed. And they are under much more this pressure. They cannot allow themselves to just do something and not work. I think much more than the men, I think.
Before we address that, I'd like to, because that veered off from the question that we were on. So, in good parliamentary procedure, I'll say, the motion on the table now is, what are people doing about recruiting?
Well, I just want to offer a thought on that, which is, we share the same question, and Jane raises the real point that we've been sitting around, talking about for a long time. And I think Nicole's points are really important, but in terms of recruitment, word of mouth tends to be the most important tool for getting people to come anywhere. I mean, actually, connections, when you know someone and they know someone and they have a student, that's how you get people to have the trust and to come find a place. And we find that most of our students actually have come through people that know one of us or somehow have some connection to, someone we know that's good enough that happens. So, it's a shared that part of our stealth agenda with this symposium, it's actually, part of this larger thrust that we as a program are doing that actually has a lot to do with recruitment. In fact, much of the money we got to run this very symposium and prepare our graduate students to run around and do all these fantastic things to help it happen is part of a grant that we got, that the other half of the grant is for recruitment. And much of the reason we tried to get it was specifically for the reason that Chris opened up this conversation. I mean, we just feel like in order to get more women applicants, we just need more applicants, period. So in order to get more applicants, we need to just get the word out to people who are sympathetic to what we're doing. And in order to do that, like we were able to hire a graduate student this year, and over the past summer to compile a database of what he thought was like-minded faculty at institutions across the country. Now, this was a lot of work, you know. It took many hours to sit there and just scour the web to find email contacts for people at all kinds of institutions who teach composition or improvisation or technology and seem like they might either have some connection to what we're doing or be sympathetic, and then we make a big database and then we just hit all these people with email. And so that's a one-way, you know, that's not going to overnight just drive hordes of people to apply here. But it's one of the kind of things that you need to do. And also going out, like when we talk about finding, for example, more African American students, which I would say is the one other underrepresented group that we're having trouble. We have amazing diversity in our program in almost all ways except gender and very few African Americans. This is really, to be honest, these are the two types that we find it difficult to attract in large numbers to apply, or in any numbers, really. So we've talked about, what we need to do is go to schools where there's a large number of African American students, and maybe schools where there's a slightly higher number of women composers being encouraged to do things, and try and just send out our faculty or our graduate students to go there to give talks, to do workshops, and you meet people. It's through that personal connection that you actually get people to apply.
And I know when I was graduating from college, I was very naive about what the possibilities were, or the music world in general. And I relied very heavily on my undergraduate professors to recommend to me where I might consider to graduate.
Right.
We're creating a program that's just starting with the Colorado Springs Conservatory of Music. So, like, for example, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and give them, actually doing this in 2 weeks, a sound painting workshop, which I'd already done, but now we're making this, like, formal connection. Like, we've actually discussed this formal connection with them so that the kids can start to eventually take a class that could be for credit, for college credit, 1 credit course through the Extended Studies program, where they come on campus, or we go to them, and we work with them with a variety of.
So these would be high school students that you're attracting to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
See, I think that's the other thing about starting at an earlier age.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I have a radical suggestion that is something that we're doing. We invited Michael. I teach at a community college, and we invited Michael this last semester to come down and do a presentation, a recital hour. Dana came last week to do a recital hour, and so it's like you say, go out to your community colleges in your areas. I don't know that anybody else would do that, but these are the students that are going to come because they're excited about seeing you. And after Michael came, I talked to students and said, I didn't know that you could do that. Yeah. I didn't know that was music. And not only
That's crazy.
It really opened doors in a way, and not only do one-way directional concerts, but do some sort of facilitated workshop to open the door so that they get this exposure to something that we don't have room in our curriculum to do, though I really want to start a new music ensemble, but will they give me FTF for it? I don't think so. But you never know. But still, this is how you could really tap into a market that I think nobody here is thinking about, because you don't think about community colleges. But this is a real wave. Our enrollment has gone up something like 30% in the last 10 years, because economically that's where it's going to make sense for students to be. So anyways, it's an idea. Community colleges go out, do workshopping, and do concerts.
And often those aren't a major investment of time. You just have to say, you want me to come? And they'll say yes. And
it's a noontime thing. And I'm a chair at the moment, and I hired Renee Coulombe to be our recital hour director. So she's someone who's really involved in this kind of world, and so she's now bringing in all these radical people at a regular pace. So to start talking to people at the community.
I like this idea of recruitment, and I think about it at multiple levels, including at the sort of faculty level, like how we recruit our faculty, and I would just want to encourage us to, if you are writing job descriptions, if you're on search committees, to just think very strategically about how you can produce the kind of applicant pool that you want
Yes,
to
it's
create
very
the kind of change. I mean, sort of speaking to the converted maybe here, but I think that's another way of.
I think that's a good point, and converted or not, it's something one has to be intensely conscious of, is how you phrase a job application. It's so easy to, one word can twist it in an entirely different applicant pool, I think. Yeah.
Just to touch on a couple of these issues, I think you're right that this recruitment has to start earlier than you think. I mean, just speaking of myself, I think if I hadn't been encouraged to do this kind of summer composition program when I was in junior high, I probably wouldn't have thought of the idea that I could become a composer.
Right.
And if you're asking, women at undergraduate level to go into something they haven't thought of, that, there's a big body of work in sociology that shows us we're most comfortable around people we look like. And so you're asking, people at a young age to overcome a formidable amount, have a formidable amount of wherewithal to move past these boundaries. And that's, it's possible, but it's difficult. So that's why I'm saying I agree that you have to start early, even earlier than, high school, junior high is when, if we can find ways to put resources towards it, that's how it's going to change.
I just had an idea. So you were talking about this blog, right? And you're talking about afterwards, how to get the community of us, sort of how do we get word out there to the public? What if, and also you're collecting resources of colleges and universities and places where we're kind of doing this kind of thing. What if I don't know if this is part of your diversity and your recruitment thing, but if there was a blog in the world, or not a blog, but a blog where all of us could add to not just the list of places that we could guide our students for graduate work, right? But also a list of places that for people to show where these are for younger people as well, that are modeling the direction already where they're going. Do you know what I can't really articulate what I want to say very well, but you know what I'm saying? If there was a resource that had all of this information together for a variety of people, maybe that would be really useful.
Maybe that can be done at the local level. For myself, I'm in a city where there are a lot of rich people. So there are rich private schools, and what I did was there's a special need school called Gateway School right near Lincoln Center where Matt Damon sent his child to. And one of my friends who's in a concert quartet sent her son there because dyslexia or something. Anyway, so what the faculty approached me and said there's a really talented boy who wants to know all about electronic music and composition, and can be sitting in my class. So I said, oh, and by the way, you will have a chaperone. So the chaperone and the boy came and sat in our joint class with Columbia graduate students. This middle school kid. And I'm very sure he's going to become, something like that. And I've done classes for first and second graders. They heard me play Omax, So exposing them early is really important because that's your resource. That's
right.
That's what we want.
Josh, did you have something to say in response to
Yeah, I was just going to piggyback on the idea, I guess, of getting recruitment and stuff. And I don't know that much about this, but I know there are structures for summer jazz workshops and things like this. But when it comes to sort of experimental music, creative music, music with technology, whatever this is called here, getting that opportunity also for sort of identity creation or presence in the community, like at least here at UC Irvine, if people knew about this program and kids from the community college level could come in and have some sort of workshop experience in the summer, a 2 or 3 day type thing, or kids at the junior high level or kids at the high school level, and have grad students facilitate some of that. It seems like having that sort of presence in the community would help.
A practical thing for that or recruitment might be to approach your recruitment office. And because, like in our case, they actually offer workshops for high school kids. And where I used to work, they offered similar workshops, science technology workshops for girls, exclusively to bring them into campus and do little things.
But they need your ideas about what to do.
Yeah, but they might be, if it's not already happening, then maybe they would be open to it, because, you know, you don't really want to take on all the work of getting a hold of high school people and organizing it. At the recruitment office, you know, that's their job. So the other thing I was going to say was, for the longer term, is like in our case, all of our students have to take a music technology course. That's going to, all of the girls that are there are also going to, you know, that will make a difference. It already is, but it's still, it wasn't required until I think this year, last year. So, but, you know, I've already seen that, you know, somebody who's a singer, oh wow, this is cool, I can record myself. I didn't know how to do that, now I do know how to do that. That's just cool. So that'll make a difference, that kind of thing, the more that's built into what they do.
This may be a suggestion, it may be easy or difficult depending on your institution, but keying on something Nicole said, we do something called interim. We take 2 weeks out of we're on a semester system, so we take 2 weeks out of the winter spring semester, which is already, we have a lopsided calendar, it's already longer than the fall. And we throw out the course schedule. And faculty and graduate students are encouraged to make proposals for special projects, workshops, classes, in something that they always wanted to do but couldn't fit in regular curriculum. Students are required to sign up for 45 hours if they're undergraduates, 60 hours if they're graduates, and they get a unit of credit. And everything that's offered has to have no prerequisites. And everybody's encouraged to try. The point of it is to try to do. Part of the point is to try things you've never tried before.
Yeah, open up the world for other people.
So for 2 weeks, you get to say, okay, no more classes except all these special things. I don't know anything about that. Go do it. You know. And it's actually a lot of fantastic things have emerged from it. And I think we're kind of lucky. We do have quite a few women, graduates and undergraduates, who are doing pretty incredible exploratory stuff. Faculty diversity is a big issue. We have a very, very diverse student body, but not a very diverse faculty. And that's pretty typical around the world. But having strong women faculty who are doing strong work does make a difference. But I agree with you, the role model thing is only part of the picture. Just an idea. Something you try out.
We're at 12, at or beyond 12:30 now, but I'm perfectly happy to keep talking. I wonder, are there topics that we haven't addressed at all that people feel, I can't believe we didn't address that, or just something that's of personal interest to you that you'd like to raise?
Easy discussion. Funding, grants.
Juan is over there with the same.
Oh, sorry, Juan.
I'm sorry, I feel like I'm grounded. Yeah, I was so, as you know, I heard all the talks because I was here.
Yeah.
So when I heard like yesterday and today, like the thing of composer, performer, improviser, scholar. So it's when you read like the bios of this kind of people like us, let's say. So you have that kind of music technology, and the scholar and professor and I see these all like tags, which I don't like. So when I see all this group of people, which is pretty special to have this kind of crowd in here because it's not very normal, I guess. What that gives me is like the sense that maybe that's another thing to look for. It's like maybe there's some group of people that is not looking for that kind of certification. That is pretty much linked to, let's say, again, the urological kind of thought. You're a composer, I'm a performer. Yeah. I know, but you're a composer, performer, but maybe you don't need that. You don't need the slash thing. You know? Yeah. Maybe it's like a new kind of practice. When I see this kind of symposium who is actually aiming to a new directions in program, I think that's a responsibility, not for me because I'm a student yet, but maybe for you.
So are you suggesting that labels be diminished, or that they be thought about more carefully, or redefined, or what? Redefined.
Or disappear, I don't know.
Well, that comes from old age. I mean, I don't know how to describe myself. And I was at ICIT 2 years ago, and I met with the director, and sort of one-on-one thing. And in Europe is even worse. And the director said, "So you're in French they call interprète, you're interpreter and a composer, right?" And he asked that 5 times.
Yeah.
You're interpreter and a composer. So it took a sinking in that it doesn't happen in that country. So it comes from age-old sort of a division of labor. And in my case, the violin world is so conservative, except that when I was a student, my teachers were, I said 90 years old and 102 or whatever. One just died this year, 102. Roman Thornberg just died 102. So, but when they were young, in 1920s and 30s, it was a radical time, very, very radical. So their ideas were much more revolutionary and liberal compared to the generation follow that generation in terms of violin pedagogy. So what happened after that generation, the people in the 70s and 60s, and that generation completely went the other way. And in terms of the violin, the history of the violin is the composers like Vivaldi, Tardi, everybody composed, and everybody revolutionized the violin technique, and that's how we were defined as as violinists, an age-old practice which completely got cut off after Chrysler. Chrysler is practically the most well-known violinist composer who composed and made name for what he made. Of course he was a great violinist, but he also left lots of pieces by Chrysler, right? But Heifetz never, except that Heifetz had a secret name as a jazz composer. Yeah. He wrote some jazz tunes under a different name. I forgot what his name was, but you look it up because he was writing like show tunes. But not on his name, not Yasha Heifetz.
That's like those cloaked musics you listen to, right? The
Yeah.
music you hide.
Yeah, you hide. So go back to your question. I'm just bringing that back. I'm trying to bring that back to the point where I don't have to say / I just can't say violinist. And then people don't expect me to be just an interpreter.
Yeah.
They still do.
But like when it's, for example, you see people like, I don't know, George Lewis. I mean, we all know George Lewis, don't we? So, as like, he just say like, all these tags, it was like 5 minutes of the conference, So what that tells me is like maybe we're approaching a new practice with old models. So, I don't know, maybe that's something to reevaluate in graduate programs.
I would just add that I think your question, your comment is really, I think it strikes at a very powerful issue within academia. And George's ability to be able to just say who he is on the terms that he says it, I think is a hard-fought, hard-won battle. For instance, if you go on the job market and you have interviews and you run into those same questions, oh, you're a composer. No, not exactly. Oh, you're a performer. No, not exactly. And then, okay, you get the job, and then you start writing up your narrative about yourself for the tenure process. Oh, you're a composer. Oh, well, not really. Or usually they're saying, you're not a composer. You're not a performer. So I think it's up to us to keep generating that different dialogue. And different kind of models, or maybe a non-model or something. I don't know exactly.
I just add to that. I'll try to be quick, but both Jason and myself and Dana, and I'm trying to think of anybody else in the room, went to this program at UCSD, studied with George Lewis, and it was called Critical Studies and Experimental Practices, and they've now renamed it and redesigned it completely. But at the time we were there, it was this wild open, woolly kind of scene where you could do anything and call yourself anything, and there were really no labels in that particular program, not in the whole department. But in that program, the particular distinction that was there wasn't a composer-performer distinction, but even more radically, the distinction that was most radical and that drew me there, and I know Dana and Jason too, was that there was no distinction between making music and thinking about it, and writing scholarly works about it. Momolani was there.
Yeah.
There was a distinction, but in terms of the curriculum, you didn't have to identify which one of those things was your primary.
But they only gave degree for writing.
Well, when we were there, this is an interesting, I'm going to mention this, when we were there, it was a totally unwritten rule, actually. It was not written down anywhere that we had to do a dissertation, a normal scholarly dissertation. So Momolani was in the program too. All four of us did that. But what they did later, and now the program is called Integrated Studies, they put tracks on it. So you do have to identify your major track and your minor track. So if you're going to go the musical track, it's now called Creative Practices, and you can do a minor in musicology or whatever. But when we were there, it was this crazy thing. The one thing I wanted to say about that was that, related to what Jason just said, when I got out of there, after 6 years in this program, I thought of myself, well, okay, I compose, I perform, and I'm doing scholarly research. Like, how cool is that? Like, I'm doing all these things I love to do. This is so much fun. It's great. And then I saw the job ads, and I'm like, wait a minute. They don't think that way at all. They're looking for a musicologist or a composer or a performer, right? So when on the one hand, I'm not trying to say that we should shape graduate programs in relation to the job market, but what I'm saying is that there's this very tricky catch-22 problem there, which is that you can start graduate programs to produce new kinds of people, but then they get out and they face the whole job market, and at the same time, there's schools that are eager to hire new kinds of people and really would like to write their job descriptions to be that person, but they look around and most doctoral programs are actually not creating that kind of person because of the reason I just mentioned, which is they want people to get jobs, because if you're creating a graduate program, you're under pressure by the administration to produce candidates who can get jobs. So this catch-22 is actually a large part of the reason we started the ICIT program. It's a large part of the reason that we had this conference to begin with. I mean, that's really the kind of crux of the problem I see, is that to change these institutions, you need new kinds of people, but they have to be created by the institutions. So it's a circular problem,
There's hope, though.
There's a lot of hope. There's a lot of hope.
Institutions are very much under pressure now to rethink this. Mm-hmm. And people who come out now with that kind of broad pedigree are going to be highly valued, I think. So it's a slow process. It'll break. It's like, I don't know, we were talking about the problem of women's roles in music, and I was thinking about, the great trombonist composer Abby Conan? Mm-hmm. You know that story?
Yeah.
About how she won the principal trombone position in the Vienna Philharmonic behind the screen. And then it all ended up in court, and it was an enormous situation. Well, there's a hero who broke something, right? Mm-hmm. And then as soon as she got the job, she said, "Maestro, I quit." But so we've come a long way since then, and we're still moving forward. And more and more, I go to conferences and institutions. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Well, we need people like this. Well, it's the people just like you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of hope.
I think so too.
I think a lot of the programs that people are starting in our group and in this conference stuff, if we think about risky behavior, it doesn't stop with the program. It continues, the risky behavior. Meaning, and you could call it deviant behavior, it continues, meaning if you're going to do an integrated or all these wonderful ways people constructed their titles for their programs, it means that you're kind of saying something, you're aligning with something that this is sort of a practice that I'm going to continue, or a behavior that I'm going to keep continuing. I'm not actually a person that waits for a job. I actually make the job. And I actually had to tell that to the administration, like, actually you didn't hire me, I created this. So I think you have this a little bit backwards here, folks, So we have to think about this, right? So are you willing to keep being a little bit, deviant? And for a good cause, for, I think, a lot of people's benefit. And slowly, you see, every 18 months there's a little job that shows up, you're like, oh, look at that, it took 18 months for that little title to kind of seep in there. Well, maybe there'll be 2 a year, and then 3, and then, that kind of thing happens, right? Because you're going to have students that graduate under your programs influencing culture too. So I just think, the risk is alive, and maybe be willing to take it.
Yeah, I would say to those of you who are graduate students or on the job market in any way, I would say definitely try to have an array of things of expertise that you attempt to develop, and then don't be fearful that you don't fit the job description. Apply anyway, and you know, these things they're all slow processes, but they all do work. So that idea of productive deviance or beneficial deviance, I think, is something to bear in mind. And we'll call it a wrap on the formal conversation. And thank you all so much.